Y'all be safe, because 12 out here. Hey, man, 12 out here, man. 12. That being Mr. Travis Hunter. Look, a lot was said about Travis Hunter. A lot has been said about him this offseason, even during the regular season. And it seems like in the training camp and the limited days that we've had so far in 2026, Travis Hunter is putting his stamp on the game, stamp on this entire team, right? We're going to hear from Travis Hunter speak about some of his teammates. We're going to watch him do some drills, obviously watch him catch a few.
He was told he wasn't ready. He was told he'd fall apart the first time the lights got bright. And then he walked onto that practice field in Berea, Ohio, and did something nobody expected. Because this isn't the story people thought they were going to tell about Shedeur Sanders. For months, the noise around him wasn't really about football. It was about his last name. It was about a hoodie and a smile and a draft slide that turned into a national conversation. Everybody had an opinion on the kid before they'd watched him throw a single real pass in a Browns uniform. That's the part that gets lost. Before he ever earned a rep, he'd already been judged. Let's go back for a second, because you can't understand this summer without understanding what came before it. He was supposed to be a top 10 pick, maybe top 5, depending on who you asked in the spring of last year. Instead, team after team passed, round after round went by, and his name just kept sitting there on the board, while cameras zoomed in on his face in that draft room, watching him try to keep his composure, while the whole country watched him get passed over, again and again. That kind of thing doesn't just embarrass a person, it brands them. Whether he liked it or not, that draft day became the headline before he'd played a single NFL snap. Cleveland finally took him, and if you thought the fall was the hard part, that was only the beginning. Because once he got to Berea, he didn't walk into a clean slate. He walked into a 4-man quarterback competition, buried behind Joe Flacco, a Super Bowl MVP, behind Kenny Pickett, a former first-round pick, and behind fellow rookie Dillon Gabriel, who the coaching staff seemed to trust first. Sanders wasn't just fighting for a job, he was fighting for reps, fighting to even get seen. And for 10 straight weeks of his rookie season, he barely got the chance. Now here's where the story gets complicated, and where a lot of people started asking questions they weren't sure they were allowed to ask out loud. Some around the building, some in the media, started to wonder if head coach Kevin Stefanski was intentionally keeping Sanders buried. The word people used, fair or not, was sabotage. Whether that's true or whether it was just a coach being conservative with an unproven rookie, that debate never fully went away. What's not up for debate is the timeline. Sanders didn't get his shot until week 11, and only then because Dillon Gabriel went down with a concussion. Think about that for a second. A guy with that much talent, that much pressure on his shoulders, sitting and waiting for 10 weeks while his own name trended for all the wrong reasons. And when he finally got in there, he didn't fold. He started multiple games down the stretch. Against the 49ers, 16 of 25 for 149 yards, a touchdown, 0 interceptions. Not eye-popping, but composed. Stefanski himself after that game said Sanders had some really good moments out there, moments they were coaching up, moments that told the staff this was a young player who was getting better in real time. By the time the season wrapped, Sanders had gone 3-4 as a starter, thrown for around 1,400 yards, and put up 7 touchdowns as a rookie who barely got a real chance until the season was half over. That's not a bust. That's a guy who got locked out of the building for 10 weeks and still made something out of the little time he was given.
Travis had the deep reception. Just kind of, what have you seen out of him for these first 4 days, and kind of how is he looking back on the field?
The deep reception was awesome to see. It's great getting him back out there with the guys. He has such an infectious energy that it affects not just the receivers, but the offensive line coaches and everybody out there. He's continuing to progress from a route technique fundamental standpoint, but also a knowledge of the offense and just the system in general. So it's exciting to see, and that development will hopefully continue.
You love to see that, right? You know, when you talk about offensive coordinators, when you talk about
But here's the part of the story that really turns the page. Kevin Stefanski didn't survive the offseason. He got fired. And when he did, the entire narrative around Sanders' rookie year got re-examined by everybody who'd been watching from the outside. Then something happened that a lot of Browns fans did not expect. After taking a new job as head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, Stefanski sat down on a podcast and said something that stopped a lot of people in their tracks. He said he loved Shedeur, said he loved coaching him, said the kid was wired the right way for this game, that he wished they'd won more, but if you watched how he played down the stretch of that season, you were watching a young player getting better. You'd think that would be a nice moment, a little bit of closure. Instead, it set off a wave of backlash from Browns fans who weren't ready to let that slide so easily. People pointed out that those words came awfully late, only after Stefanski no longer had to live with the consequences of how he used Sanders. One fan put it bluntly online, saying they'd wait until Stefanski got fired from his next job to hear his real thoughts that time too. Another said his actions all season long told a completely different story than his podcast comments did. Whatever you believe about Stefanski's intentions, one thing became impossible to ignore. The guy who was supposedly holding Sanders back was gone, and the door that had been shut for 10 weeks of his rookie year was suddenly wide open. Enter Todd Monken, new head coach, new offensive vision, and almost immediately a very different approach to the quarterback room in Cleveland. Because this summer, from day one of training camp, Sanders wasn't buried on a four-man depth chart anymore. He was in a direct competition with Deshaun Watson, a former franchise quarterback trying to come back from a second ruptured Achilles, for the actual starting job. Not a formality, not a camp body, a real competition with real stakes. And this time, Sanders wasn't sitting on the sideline watching somebody else get the reps he needed. And that's when the story we're really here to tell begins. On day 4 of this year's camp, Sanders took first-team reps for the second time already. That's the kind of detail that tells you everything about how quickly the temperature in that quarterback room has changed. He finished the day completing 13 of 22 passes, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. Numbers on a stat sheet, sure, but numbers that made people who'd already written him off go back and check the tape twice. Here's the thing people keep underestimating about Shedeur Sanders. He's not just fighting for reps anymore, he's fighting Deshaun Watson for the job outright. A former #1 overall pick against a quarterback who once got paid like a franchise savior. That's not supposed to be a fair fight on paper. And yet, according to people inside that building, so far, Sanders has looked like the better option. Let that sink in for a second. Not, he's competitive. Not, he's holding his own. The better option, in a quarterback room that a year ago wasn't even supposed to be his to win. But this story isn't just about completions and touchdowns. It's about how a kid handles getting hit, literally and figuratively, and keeps standing up. Because it hasn't all been highlight reels this camp either. There's still criticism. There's always going to be criticism. People questioning his reads, his footwork, whether the swagger is earned or just inherited from a father who never learned how to be quiet about his son's talent. Analysts picking apart every incomplete pass like it's a referendum on his whole career. And then there was the moment that had nothing to do with the stat sheet at all. During one of the recent camp practices, a scuffle broke out. Started with a couple of linemen going at it, the way these things always start, small and stupid, and then it pulled in more bodies, the way a fight in a locker room always does. In the middle of it, defensive end Jared Verse found a way to make it personal. He mocked Sanders' signature celebration, right there in front of everybody. A little dig. A little reminder that respect in this league isn't given, it's taken rep by rep, and if you slip even a little, somebody's going to let you know about it. You want to know what tells you more about a player than a touchdown pass? How he responds to getting mocked in front of his own teammates. Does he chase the moment? Does he let it get in his head? Or does he let it go and come back the next day and just play?
The outside shoulder of Quentin Morrison for the interception and return to the 20-yard line. Bad decision thrown into quadruple coverage. Great play on the ball by Travis Hunter. And then it seemed like Travis Hunter on the day, I think I've shown you basically all of these clips, but Travis Hunter is having a day on both sides of the ball. The interception, 2 long range completions in 11-11. Y'all have, that was up here. These were these first ones. So this is the long reception in the teal. You know what I'm saying? Drop it on him.
Because that's exactly what he did. This is the part of the story that doesn't get the headlines, but probably should. The quiet stuff, the stuff that happens before anybody's filming. People around the building have talked about how he approaches the game mentally, not chasing the noise, just chasing the process. Adjusting to the rhythm of live reps after all the years of college football. Learning the small technical things that separate a good college arm from an NFL starter. Timing, footwork under pressure, reading a defense that's disguising its coverage instead of sitting there in something obvious. None of that is glamorous. None of that trends on social media. But it's the difference between a kid with a famous last name and a quarterback who actually deserves the job. And there's another layer to this story that a lot of people overlook completely because it doesn't fit the drama they want to write about him. This offseason, Sanders has started taking on a mentor role of his own. With rookie quarterback Taylon Green now in that building, it's been Sanders staying late, getting in early, working with the newest guy in the room the same way veterans once worked with him. That's not something a selfish player does. That's not something a guy who's only chasing the spotlight does. That's a young quarterback who understands what it felt like to be the outsider in that quarterback room, and who's making sure the next guy doesn't have to feel quite as alone as he did. And maybe the most surprising relationship in that whole building isn't with a mentor or a rookie at all. It's with Deshaun Watson, the very man he's competing against for the starting job. Reports out of Cleveland have described their relationship as genuinely strong, Watson mentoring Sanders even while the two of them are fighting for the exact same title. That's rare in this league. Most quarterback battles come with tension you can cut with a knife. This one, at least publicly, has looked more like two professionals pushing each other to be better, rather than two rivals trying to tear each other down. And think about what Watson himself is walking back from. 2 ruptured Achilles tendons, a career that by any normal standard should have ended a coach's confidence in him ever being a full-time starter again. Instead of resenting the rookie who might take his job, by most accounts he's chosen to pour into him. That says something about Watson, but it also says something about Sanders, because veterans don't usually invest that kind of energy into a guy they don't respect. You don't mentor somebody you think is a fraud. You mentor somebody you can see is actually going to be good, whether you like the timing of it or not. There's a version of this story where Sanders comes in loud, chases the spotlight, treats the quarterback room like a popularity contest instead of a job. That version would have been easy to write. It's the version a lot of people expected, honestly, given everything that came before it. The draft day cameras, the family name, the constant back and forth on social media. Instead, what's actually happened inside that building looks almost like the opposite. A guy getting in early, a guy staying late, a guy learning the offense instead of trying to be bigger than it. Now let's talk about where this pressure actually comes from, because it isn't just football analysts and mock draft grades. It's a last name that comes with its own gravity. Deion Sanders didn't just coach his son in college. He built an entire brand around confidence, around refusing to apologize for believing in yourself out loud. That upbringing gave Shedeur an edge that a lot of quarterbacks simply don't have. But it also meant that every single misstep, every incomplete pass, every so-so quarter got magnified through a lens that had nothing to do with football, and everything to do with the narrative people had already decided to believe about who he was before he ever put on an NFL uniform. That's an almost impossible environment to develop quietly. Most rookie quarterbacks get the mercy of being ignored for a season while they figure things out. Sanders never got that mercy. Every practice rep, every depth chart update, every quote from a coach got dissected like it was breaking news. And somehow, through all of it, the version of him that's shown up in Berea this summer isn't a guy who's bitter about the scrutiny. It's a guy who just keeps working like the scrutiny doesn't exist at all.
Day 4 of Jaguars training camp. This was Travis Hunter's day. Yeah, a breakout day from the cornerback and wide receiver. We heard him talk on Friday about working his way back from injury. He told us he feels free out here, and it certainly showed today. 2 long receptions from Trevor Lawrence, and then also an interception. And that second reception, as well as the interception, coming just a few plays apart in an 11-on-11.
Here's where the story gets emotional, because this isn't just about football for him. It never really was. Growing up under a father who built his entire identity on confidence, on refusing to shrink in front of anybody, that's a blessing and it's a weight. Every mistake gets magnified. Every celebration gets called arrogance instead of joy. People wanted him humbled before he'd even had the chance to be great. And instead of shrinking from that, instead of playing it safe and quiet just to avoid the criticism, he kept being exactly who he is. That takes something most people don't talk about enough. It takes a strange kind of courage to keep smiling, keep celebrating, keep being yourself, when you know a whole section of the football world is just waiting for the excuse to say, "I told you so." If this story is hitting you right now, do me a favor and hit subscribe, because we're only getting started on this one, and you're going to want to see where it goes from here. Now here's the turn. Here's the part where the narrative starts to crack. Because for the longest time, the conversation around Shedeur Sanders wasn't "is he good enough to start?" It was "how long until they give up on him?" Those are 2 completely different conversations. And somewhere between the 10 weeks he spent buried on that depth chart and day 4 of this year's camp, the conversation changed without anybody officially announcing it changed. You could feel it in the way the new coaching staff talks about him, in the way beat reporters started leading their stories with his name instead of burying it in the 4th paragraph, in the way the quarterback room started to feel less like a formality and more like an actual competition he has a real chance to win. That's not nothing. In this league, momentum is currency, and right now he's spending it like a guy who knows exactly what he's building. But let's not pretend this is a fairy tale with the ending already written, because it isn't. One good camp doesn't erase a full rookie season of scrutiny. One strong practice doesn't silence people who've been doubting him since before he ever put on a Browns uniform. There's still an entire season ahead. There's still a locker room to win over completely, not just impress in flashes. There's still Deshaun Watson, a former franchise quarterback with far more experience, still standing in that quarterback room with a resume that says he's earned the benefit of the doubt too, even after everything his own career has been through. And that's what makes this so tense to watch, because nothing here is decided. Every practice is a referendum. Every interception gets replayed by people looking for reasons to say the hype was premature. Every touchdown gets replayed by people who've been waiting for the moment to say we told you so in the other direction. He's not just playing quarterback right now. He's playing under a microscope that most 20-something-year-olds never have to survive. A microscope that started before he threw a single professional pass, back on that draft night when the cameras wouldn't stop finding his face. And so far, whatever you think about the noise around him, whatever you think about the last name, whatever you think about the swagger, he hasn't blinked.
Park and Cole, they don't always do their thing. They don't always be there. They the first people in the building. Me and BT chasing that. We want to be the first person to go. Might not be able to beat Park because he's turning on the alarm and turning off the alarm. So Park is here all day. But, we just try to, make each other better in that room. We just continue to stay on top of each other. I've been out for 9 months, so all those guys are standing on me like, Trav, this is what you got to do. This is how you get that. This is how you do this. So they definitely, helped me a lot.
That is amazing. Now,
and it's worth remembering just how public the low point actually was. This wasn't a quiet, private struggle that only insiders knew about. It played out on television, in mock drafts, in real time, pick after pick, as team after team passed on him, and analysts openly speculated about what was wrong. Then it played out again during his rookie season. Every single week he didn't dress. Every single week another quarterback got the start he was hoping for. There's a very small number of players in this league who've had their worst moments broadcast that widely before they'd even had the chance to prove themselves. Most guys get to struggle in private. He didn't get that option. So when people talk about resilience in sports, they usually mean it in the abstract. A guy who battles back from an injury. A guy who has one bad season and bounces back the next year. What Sanders has had to battle back from is different. It's reputational. It's the exhausting work of trying to be seen for what you actually are, while an entire industry has already decided what story they want to tell about you. And the only real weapon against that kind of noise is exactly what he's been doing all along. Show up, put the work in, let the tape speak instead of the headlines. That's the story underneath the story, not the touchdowns, not the stat lines. The fact that a kid who's been publicly doubted longer than most players ever have to endure just kept showing up, kept working, kept mentoring the next guy behind him, kept believing in himself when belief was in short supply everywhere else, including, for a while, inside his own building. Think about everything that had to happen just to get him to this point. A draft day slide that humiliated him on national television, a rookie season where he barely got to play until the year was half over, a head coach whose handling of him became a real controversy, one that outlasted that coach's own job in Cleveland. And now, finally, a completely rebuilt situation. New coach, new system, new competition. An actual, fair shot to prove that everything people saw in college was real. So where does this go from here? Does he win the job outright? Does Watson's experience end up mattering more when the games start counting for real? Does the pressure finally catch up to him the way so many predicted it would? Or does he keep doing what he's done since the moment he walked into that building, which is simply outwork the doubt? Nobody knows yet. That's what makes this worth watching. But here's what we do know. A year ago, people were writing him off before he ever got a real shot, and then writing him off again when he barely got to play. Today, inside that building in Berea, people are starting to whisper a very different sentence. Not can he handle it, but what if he's actually the guy? And if there's one thing Shedeur Sanders has proven, over and over, whether people wanted to admit it or not, it's that betting against him has never been a safe bet. The kid who was supposed to fold under the weight of his own name, the kid who sat for 10 weeks watching someone else get his reps, the kid whose own coach's true feelings only came out after that coach no longer had to answer for how he used him, just keeps standing taller under all of it instead. And this next chapter of his story, we're just getting started telling it.